Margaret stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching her husband adjust his tie in the mirror. The black tuxedo fit him perfectly. It should have. She'd been the one who picked it up from the tailor, who'd noticed the hem needed taking in, who remembered the way he liked the cufflinks turned just so. "David," she said softly, "what time should I be ready for the gala?" He didn't even turn around. He kept staring at his own reflection, smoothing the lapel with 2 fingers like he was admiring a painting of himself. "You're not coming," he said. The words landed flat, casual, like he was telling her the weather. Margaret felt her chest tighten. "What do you mean?" "It's the company gala. I've gone every year for 15 years. Finally, he looked at her, but not really at her. His eyes moved over her the way you'd glance at an old couch you'd been meaning to throw out. Her plain gray cardigan, her hair pulled back without a thought, her hands, rough from years of holding everything together while he climbed. "That's exactly the problem, Margaret," he said. "Look at yourself. Do you ever look at yourself? Half the executives' wives spend their lives at the gym, at the salon. And then there's you. You'd embarrass me in front of the entire board." He turned back to the mirror. "I have a reputation now. I'm being considered for the executive vice president position. I can't walk in there with this." The word "this" hit her like a slap. "Not you, this." As if she'd stopped being a person somewhere along the way and had quietly become an object he was ashamed to own. "Who's going with you then?" Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. David smiled at his reflection. "Vanessa, my assistant. She knows how to present herself. She understands what these events require." He finally faced her fully, and there was something cruel in the calmness of it. "It's just for appearances, Margaret. Don't make it dramatic. You should be grateful. At least one of us is keeping this family's image alive." Margaret didn't answer. She couldn't. Because the truth was, she barely recognized the woman he was describing. And worse, she barely recognized herself in the mirror behind him. She had once been someone. She didn't say it out loud. She never did anymore. But the thought surfaced like it always did, late at night, in quiet rooms. "I used to be someone." Before him, David grabbed his keys off the dresser. "Don't wait up. These things run late." He paused at the door, glancing back one last time. "And please, do something about the house this weekend. It's starting to look as tired as everything else around here." The front door closed. The sound of his car pulling out of the driveway faded into silence. Margaret stood alone in the bedroom for a long time. She walked to the mirror slowly, almost afraid of it, and looked at the woman staring back, 42 years old, tired eyes, a face that had spent 15 years apologizing for taking up space. But underneath the tiredness, just for a second, she saw a flicker of something else, something he'd never bothered to ask about, something he didn't know still existed. She sat on the edge of the bed and picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over a contact she hadn't called in months, her oldest friend, Diane. The one person who still remembered who Margaret had been before. The phone rang twice. "Margaret?" Diane's voice. "Honey, what's wrong?" "It's almost 9. Margaret opened her mouth, and what came out wasn't a sob or a complaint or 15 years of swallowed words. It was 4 words, spoken in a voice she hadn't heard from herself in a very long time. "Diane, I'm done waiting." There was a pause on the line. Then Diane said something that made Margaret's hand tighten around the phone. Something that would change everything. "Good," Diane said, "because there's something about you I think it's finally time the world remembered." "Sit down, Margaret. We need to talk about who you really are." "What are you talking about, Diane?" Margaret asked, sitting down slowly on the edge of the bed. "I'm talking about the woman I met 20 years ago," Diane said. Her voice had lost its softness. It was sharp now, urgent. The one who walked into that investment firm at 26 and had partners twice her age taking notes when she spoke. The one who built financial models people are still teaching in business schools. Do you remember her, Margaret? Because I do, and I'm so tired of watching you pretend she never existed. Margaret closed her eyes. She remembered. Of course she remembered. The corner office she'd earned by 30. The deals she'd structured. The young analysts who used to wait outside her door just to ask her advice. And then, David, the wedding. Just step back for a year, until my career stabilizes. 1 year had become 2. 2 had become 15. Somewhere in there, the woman in the corner office had quietly disappeared, and nobody, least of all Margaret, had noticed when she stopped being missed. That was a long time ago, Margaret whispered. It was yesterday, Diane shot back. Talent doesn't expire because a man told you to make yourself smaller. Now listen to me, that gala? David's company is hanging by a thread, and you know it. He talks about it in his sleep. I'd bet money on it. The whole thing survives because of one investor, one man whose money keeps the lights on. Dr. Bennett, Margaret said automatically. She'd heard the name 100 times across the dinner table. David spoke it like a prayer. Yes. Diane paused. Margaret, think. Bennett, from the firm. The skinny, terrified junior analyst who used to follow you around like a lost dog because you were the only one who'd actually teach him anything. Margaret's breath caught. The phone went still against her ear. Thomas, she said. The name came out of somewhere deep. Somewhere she'd locked away. Thomas Bennett. Thomas Bennett, Diane confirmed. Who is now worth 9 figures, and who, last I heard, still credits the woman who saw something in him when no one else did in every single interview he gives. He has never once said her name publicly, but you and I know exactly who she is. She's sitting on a bed right now in a gray cardigan, believing she's nothing. Margaret stood up. Her hands were shaking, but not the way they shook when David spoke to her. This was different. This was the feeling of a door she'd nailed shut starting to swing open. He doesn't know, she said. He doesn't know I'm married to David. David uses his mother's last name professionally. I took it when we married. Bennett has no idea his investment is funding the company of the man whose wife is... She stopped. The man whose wife is the only mentor he ever had, Diane finished quietly. David has no idea who he's been throwing away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Margaret walked to the closet, not to David's tailored suits, but to the very back, where a garment bag had hung untouched for 15 years. Inside was a dress she'd never explained to him, never worn, never thrown away. She didn't know, even now, why she'd kept it. She knew now. The gala is Saturday, she said. Her voice was steady. It frightened her how steady it was. That's 3 days. 3 days is plenty, Diane said, and Margaret could hear her smiling. I'm picking you up at 9 tomorrow morning. We're going to the salon. We're going to the boutique. And by Saturday night, every person in that ballroom is going to remember a name David spent 15 years trying to make you forget. Your own. Be ready. Margaret hung up the phone. She walked to the mirror one more time. The tired eyes were still there. But behind them, something old and bright was waking up. Something David had buried but never managed to kill. She pulled the garment bag from the closet and laid it across the bed. Slowly, she unzipped it, and when she saw the deep crimson fabric catch the light, 15 years collapsed into a single, electric moment. Her phone buzzed. A text. From David. She read it once. Then she read it again, and her hand went cold around the phone, because what he'd written, without knowing it, had just sealed his own ending. The text from David read, Vanessa picked out a $4,000 dress for tonight. Put it on the company card. Worth every penny. She actually knows how to make me look good. Try to use the time alone to fix yourself up a little. For once. Margaret read it twice. Then she set the phone down, and she didn't cry. 3 days ago, she would have. Tonight, she simply smiled. A slow, calm smile, and finished zipping the crimson dress. The transformation over those 3 days hadn't been about the salon or the boutique, though Diane had dragged her through both. It had been about something quieter. Every time the stylist asked what she wanted, Margaret had to remember she was allowed to want things. By Saturday, the woman in the mirror wasn't a made-over housewife. She was someone returning from a long exile. The ballroom of the Hartwell Grand glittered with chandeliers and quiet money. Margaret walked in alone, without an invitation, because she didn't need one. Diane had made a single phone call to an old contact, and doors that had been closed for 15 years simply opened. The room noticed her before she'd taken 10 steps. Conversations paused, heads turned, not because they recognized her. Most didn't, but because some people walk into a room like they're apologizing for it, and some walk in like they built it. Margaret walked in like she'd come back to collect something. Across the room, David stood with Vanessa on his arm, mid-laugh, glass of champagne tilted toward a cluster of executives. He glanced up, the way you glance at any new arrival, and then he froze. The champagne stopped halfway to his lips. His face did something complicated. Confusion, then disbelief, then a dawning, sickening panic as he understood that the stunning woman silencing the room was his wife. But Margaret wasn't looking at David. She was looking at the silver-haired man near the center of the room, the one the entire gala orbited around, the one David had been desperately maneuvering toward all night. Dr. Thomas Bennett. He was older now, distinguished, surrounded by people competing for his attention, and he had stopped listening to all of them, because he was staring at Margaret like a man seeing a ghost he'd prayed about. He set down his glass. The crowd parted instinctively as he crossed the floor. He stopped in front of her, and in a voice thick with 20 years of gratitude, he said the words that would detonate David's entire world. "Professor!" He almost laughed, eyes wet. "My God, Margaret, you vanished. I looked for you for years. There isn't a stage I've stood on where I didn't tell them about the woman who taught me everything." He turned to the stunned executives gathering around them. "This woman built the framework my entire firm runs on. Whatever she's doing now, wherever she's been, it has been the great regret of my career that I lost her." The silence in that ballroom was total. David stood frozen 10 feet away, his mouth open, watching the most powerful man in the room treat his embarrassing wife like royalty. Vanessa quietly let go of his arm and took a step back, the way people step away from something that's about to collapse. Margaret finally turned to her husband. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You spent 15 years telling me I was nothing, David," she said, and the whole room heard it. "You used the company card to dress your assistant. You told me I'd embarrass you here." She glanced at Bennett, then back. "I think we both know whose name they'll remember after tonight." It came out over the following week, piece by piece. The company card, the expenses, the assistant. Bennett pulled his investment from anything connected to David's leadership within the month. David's vice presidency evaporated. By the time the divorce was filed, Margaret asked for less than she was owed in money, and far more than he expected in writing. A signed admission of everything he'd done. She didn't need to destroy him. She just stopped holding him up. 1 year later, Margaret stood on a stage in front of 300 women, not as anyone's wife, but as herself, consulting for the very firm she'd once helped build, finally living under her own name again. Here is the truth she left them with, and the truth this story leaves you with. The people who try to make you small are not measuring your worth. They are measuring their fear of it. The best revenge was never burning down his life. It was remembering that the woman he tried to erase had been brilliant all along, and that she was never his to diminish. She was always her own. It is never too late to walk back into a room as yourself. If Margaret's story moved you, do something for her, and for everyone who needs to hear this. Hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this only reach the people who need them when you do. And in the comments, type the word worthy. Let's see how many people believe it's never too late to reclaim your own life. Share this with one person who forgot how powerful they really are. Your moment is coming too. Don't miss it.